What's up guys, John Bird III here. We're back again for another video. And in today's video, we're going to talk about a reel that you don't hear a lot from Lew's, but it's definitely a reel that you need to throw big baits on, to make long casts, and to be able to pull those fish out of super heavy cover. But before we jump into that, if you're new to the channel, make sure you hit that like and subscribe button. Also hit that notification bell. That way you can be notified whenever a new video drops and hits the channel. So this reel right here we're about to talk about, I'm gonna just call it Todd Castledine's reel. This is a reel that he rants and raves about. He really loves this reel, and that's the reel that he pretty much uses majority of the time anytime he's throwing a bait caster. And that reel is the Superduty 300. So for me, this reel right here, it will be a straight up and down big bait, like the new Strike King Hogfather glide bait type of reel for me. Now, as I mentioned earlier, Castledine uses this reel. You've seen videos where he's posted pictures where the knobs are worn down. It just all beat up. But he's had that reel for maybe 5-6 years now. And so with the Superduty 300, it is definitely a bigger platform reel. So again, 300 size reel. Now, my reel that I like to use within the Super Duty family is the standard Super Duty, right? So the standard Super Duty is equivalent to a 200 size reel. So we're talking about braid capacities. You're talking about 120 yards of 50-pound braid, whereas the Super Duty 300 holds about 180, 190 yards of 50-pound braid. So you're going to get a lot more line on the Super Duty 300 versus the standard Super Duty. Now, Castledine throws hybrid hunters, big worms. He literally does pretty much everything that he could do with a bait caster. That's pretty much what he uses this reel for. Now, he uses some of the other reels in the Lew's lineup, like the Custom Pro and stuff like that. But the Super Duty 300 is his reel, and just simply because it's a workhorse, and as in his words that he said in multiple videos, they don't break. So he's never had an issue with the Super Duty 300s, and he always looking for a reel that he can do a lot with. Now, let's keep in mind, when you're talking about a Super Duty 300, you're talking about a big boy reel. Big gears, brass gears, aluminum frame reel, no flex, so he can put heavy torque on them. And it also has 24 pounds of drag. Now, the standard Super Duty has 20 pounds of drag, which, if we're being completely honest, 24 and 20, like, you will never be in a situation where you need all 20 pounds of drag. Like, you just won't. I don't care how thick the cover is. 20 pounds of drag is overkill, to be completely honest. So this reel has 24, whereas the standard has 20. Now, what I've been doing lately, and I've been, dropping hints to Castledine and telling them, like, dude, like, you need to get your hands on some of the standard Super Duties. You have to keep in mind, Castledine is 6'4", real big hands, so a 300 size reel, it's not going to feel super big to him at all. It's actually going to probably feel like, to us average size guys, it's going to feel like a standard size reel. And to be honest, it's not really that big, but you definitely can tell a difference between a standard 200 size regular Super Duty versus the Super Duty 300. So for me, if I'm going out and buy a Super Duty 300, I'm your average angler, this reel would be a very specific reel for me. So we're talking big glide baits, or just the swim bait world. That is where I would grab this reel right here, and I would pair it with a Super Duty rod. Right? I mean, it just only makes sense because the Super Duty rod lineup, and just being completely frank, the Super Duty rod lineup has certain rods that have lure weight ratings for those bigger baits. So your 3-ounce baits, your 4-ounce baits, and stuff like that. You can go get a Super Duty rod like the 711 heavy or extra heavy to be able to cover yourself when throwing those big swim baits like that. I'm not a swim bait guy, but with the tater hog, I would throw like a 7.6 heavy, which I have over there. I flip with that rod, but the 7.6 heavy works perfect for the Hogfather, the tater hog, the new swim bait, glide bait from Strike King. That will be the ideal rod for that. But with this Super Duty 300, again, you're talking about a lot of line, more so bigger line. If you remember in his sight fishing video that Castledine did, and he caught one that was 10 plus with Kyle Patrick, like I think he talked about he had like 25 or 30 pound fluoro on there. Now he's using Sunline, so when you talk about poundage of a line, like that's kind of neither here nor there. It's really the diameter. So Sunline's 30, it's like Strike King's 25. So you're talking about bigger lines. So the bigger the line is and the bigger the diameter, it takes up more line within the spool. So if I put 65 pound braid on here, yeah, I can get a good bit of braid on here, but I'm not gonna get nowhere near as much as with this 300 size spool. And again, and also one thing to note as well, that the Super Duty 300, the spool is a tad bit wider than the standard Super Duty. It's just a tad bit wider, but it's also, there's a lot more depth to the Super Duty 300 size reel. Now, braking system wise, you want to get down into the nitty gritty. I'll go ahead and show you what braking system in there. And so this has, so in the standard Super Duty, standard magnetic braking system. Now it has double the magnets. Like your traditional braking system normally has 5, so this has 8 in there. So you have a little bit more brakes here. But with the Super Duty 300, actually has a different braking system. So it has the MSB. So you got the pins here that you can turn on and off, and you have your magnets right there as well. So with that, you're able to kind of fine tune this a little bit more. So typically with this reel right here, since it has, let's see how many pins it has in. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It has 6 pins. I will probably turn on 4 of the 6 pins on here, and then I will start my brakes, my magnetic brakes right here on the outside. I probably start at like 5, halfway, and then I kind of maneuver it from there. A lot of reels that have the pins on the inside, I always start with more brakes versus less. And I actually just watched a video today from Tactical Bassin, and Matt was saying how he basically turns all his pins off with an exception of 1. So if it has 6 here, turn all 5 of them off. If it has 4 here, turn 3 of the 4 off. And that's how he uses his reel and adjusts his reel and adjusts with the play. I don't do that because with him, like he's using a lot more thumb control. I will have to compare to see how much more distance they're getting by doing that. And I haven't played around with that, but I like to be able to make a long cast and just take my hand off the spool and be able to allow it just to hit the water and not backlash like. Which is why when you get the Custom Pro, the Custom, and you're introducing yourself to the new Paramag braking system, whether it's the RX or the ITB, that's why I really love that particular braking system. But again here, if you get this reel right here, my recommendation, you turn on 4 of the pins and leave 2 of them off, and then just adjust your gas pedal and adjust your brake pedal, and then you'll be good to go. And so that's really pretty much it for just to give you a gist of the Super Duty 300. You haven't seen this on the channel. You haven't really heard me talk about it a whole lot, but I definitely wanted to do a deep dive into that. And talk about some of the different features compared from the standard Super Duty, which you've heard me talk about. It's a workhorse reel. This is my frogging reel that I use. This really the only reel I use for frogging. This is the only thing I use this reel for. It's because I want that super beef up reel. Now, I didn't talk about this. Weight. This reel, the standard Super Duty weighs 8 ounces. The Super Duty 300 weighs 9.2. So in my opinion, both of these reels are heavy. I will say the Super Duty 300 doesn't feel as heavy as the standard Super Duty, and I think that's just because the weight is probably a little bit more dispersed because the frame is bigger than the standard Super Duty size. But again, neither one of them really bother me because like I'm only using this reel for frogging, and that's it. I'm not throwing no other bait. Now, if I'm going to punch, I could punch with this reel, but I don't. I punch with a Gen 2 speed spool and a Gen 2 custom. Like those are the reels that I punch with. But for frogging, I only rely on the Super Duty because, I mean, whether it's open water frogging or skipping under the cypress trees, a little bit of hot drill around the cypress tree frogging type deal, like big boy stuff. I mean, the standard Super Duty for me gets it done. I don't need to move up to the Super Duty 300. But if you want to try the Super Duty 300, give it a shot. Todd loves it. But again, you have to keep in mind, Todd's 6'4". He's a bigger dude, bigger hands. So if you're a standard size or you're an average size guy like me with average size hands, like this reel is going to feel a little bit more. It's going to feel bigger. The weight of the reel may cause you a little bit more fatigue, whereas Todd, it may feel like a standard size reel to us, what that feels like to us. So, I mean, that's just really the biggest comparison. Now, there was a lot of guys back in the day, especially during the, I would say, the Denny Brower era. They loved the flip and switch. On the standard Super Duty, you have the flip and switch. So if you want that feature, the Super Duty 300 doesn't have that, but your standard Super Duty does. And so again, that's neither here nor there. I never turn the switch on because again, for me, I'm only frogging with the standard Super Duty. That's it. I'm not doing a whole lot of flipping and punching and stuff like that. And I only run straight braid on there. 50 pound is on there right now. I'm tempted to go to 65 tour grade. It has the diameter of the 65-pound tour grade braid compared to the diameter of the 50-pound contra braid. They're not that far off. Of course, the 65 is still bigger, but it's in hand. If you rub it, it's smoother than the contra. I haven't really had many issues with contra, especially on the 50. Like, that's what I throw all my top water walking baits on. Just pretty much all top waters, frogs, all that stuff. 50 does me well, but I'm thinking of switching to 65, and I may play around with that a little bit more. But again, back to the Super Duty 300. You definitely will want to check this out if you're looking for a great glide bait reel, or if you just want a reel that holds a ton of line. When I mean a ton, I mean a ton. Like, you could get a bad backlash, cut it out, and then you still have a lot of line on here. But keep in mind this. When you have a bigger spool like this that holds this amount of line, that's a lot of line that you're having to put on here. And whenever you put line on any reel, if you don't, and I see pictures of this, and I fished with some guys before when they take their reel and their reel only have like half the spool full up with line, you are not getting the full capacity as far as gear ratio when you're turning the handle of the reel or anything like that, because you're working on half the amount of line, and then when you cast it out, there's even less line in there. So the gear ratio would never be the same. So always fill your line up to pretty much, there's always like a little, I would say like a little 45-degree edge in there. Always fill your line up to about that 45-degree edge, because that works perfect. And that's the perfect amount of line on here. That's not too much, and it's pretty much, that's full at that point. And you'll be able to get maximum distance. You're getting the actual gear ratio that it is. And that's what you have to do. Because again, if you go half the spool full up with line, like, you know, what's the purpose of buying this big reel and not gonna fill it all the way up? So fill your reels up with line. I know line is expensive, but there's plenty of cheaper options that you can go out there and buy and not have to break the bank. Nobody's saying go out there and buy, you know, like Cigar Tatsu and pay those prices, because that's pretty high end. Like, I pretty much only use Strike King Contra, fluorocarbon. I use the tool grade a little bit, but I think I like the Contra more. But I mean, it's affordable. There's plenty, like I said, there are plenty of options, whatever. Because fluorocarbon, especially fluorocarbon, is expensive. Braid is expensive too, but I think it's contingent upon, let's say, like, you don't get the same amount of braid that you would do fluorocarbon, right? So keep that in mind. If you want to get this reel, you can put backing on there and then tie your main line on there. It's pretty much whatever you want to do, but definitely check out the Super Duty 300. It's definitely a great reel. Oh, one last thing I forgot to mention. Bearings. If you're a bearing count guy and you always worrying about bearings, the standard Super Duty has 11, whereas this Super Duty here, the Super Duty 300, has 7. Does that matter in my opinion? No, I'm not that bearing guy. I remember my dad taught me about bearings, and you gotta have, you gotta have the most ball bearings. But if you got, I mean, these reels, some companies put bearings just in random places that they don't really have no reason to be. And so you're just getting a bunch of bearings that's not helping the performance of it. So definitely with a reel like this, you're going to have the bearings in the right place. And that's definitely something that Luz has been working on for a while, making sure they got the right amount of bearings in the right places. You don't need 10, 12, 15, 20, 500 bearings in a reel. You can get by with 4, 5, 6, especially if they're in the right places. So always keep that in the back of your mind. I don't care what nobody else has to say. But anyway, that's it. That's the Super Duty 300. So if you're a big follower of Todd's channel, you know this is a reel that he really loves, and this is pretty much his primary reel that he uses. Give it a shot. Take it out. Again, for me, like, y'all know I get super dialed in. I get deep into the weeds of it. This is a swim bait reel for me. Glide bait, whatever. But even when the new Hogfather comes out, I'll probably throw it on the standard reel. But that's what this reel is. For me, in my arsenal, a big bait reel. Aside from that, like, that's really where it fits. I get very detailed, get in the weeds. If you follow the channel for a long time, that's just what I do. And I try to find the best situation for every product that I use, every reel, every rod, because I want to be able to get maximum performance out of them. So again, Todd throws hybrid hunters and everything on this reel. So you're definitely going to want to check it out. But again, Superduty 300 big bait reel, it's a freaking beast. So you're definitely going to want to check it out. But that's it for today's video. If you like this type of content, make sure you leave a comment down below in the comment section. Also hit that notification bell. That way you can be notified whenever new videos drop. Hit the channel. I'm JB3. I got to get back to living the dream. I'll catch you later.